and I just wanted to be a broker so bad. I would knock on the CFO's door literally like once a week, like, look how many data entries or listings I got this week, and I'd show him a binder. I need to be a broker. You got to make me a broker. And finally, he agreed, and he made me a broker just in time for the global financial crisis.
Nice.
So that was great.
Nice.
Great timing on my end.
Nice.
So that comes around in 2008. Everything I'm working on totally falls apart. But I learned at that point that in some ways, just as a broker, not generally in the market, as a broker, that when these types of huge, awful events, financial events happen, sometimes it's actually not the worst thing for a broker because deals are a little bit easier to do.
And we have spoken about traditionally, within the industry, some of us that have been around for a real long time, we always talk about it, and it's hard. It's a hard pill for people to swallow. But it's at those times that you actually learn the most educationally, but you also have the opportunity to really cement relationships.
Totally, no doubt. Well said.
So,
yeah.
So that's how that plays.
Absolutely.
Hey everybody, welcome again to the Zelnik Exchange. I am your host, Corey Zelnik. I have the pleasure today to spend time with an old friend, although he's much younger than I am, Brandon Singer. He is the chairman, CEO, and founder, one of the founders of Retail by Mona. They are a retail leasing brokerage powerhouse here in New York City, a friendly competitor of ours.
Yep.
But I know Brandon a long time, and I'm looking forward to spending some time with him today. Let me give you some background on Brandon. Like I said, Brandon is the founder and CEO of Mona. He's been in and about the business now for over 17 years. Early days at RKF, a former retail brokerage house here in New York City, now part of Newmark.
Yep.
And then he spent a bunch of years over at Cushman & Wakefield, doing a whole bunch of retail stuff. We're going to hear all about his history shortly from him. But Mona is it's almost more than a rising star. You are a star performer here in New York City in the retail landscape.
Thank you. Means a lot coming from you.
Thank you. Some of his prominent deals are Gucci and Breitling down in the Meatpacking district, and we'll dig into some of that a little bit. LUISAVIAROMA, did I pronounce it?
LUISAVIAROMA.
LUISAVIAROMA,
yes.
Appreciate that, on Bond Street. He's been involved with flagships for Ben Soleimani Furniture, Showfields, Padel Haus, and a whole host of others. I know Brandon is a New York City resident, and he actually works up the block. So, Brandon, welcome to the Zelnik Exchange.
Thank you for having me, Corey. It's truly, I watch your show, I watch this podcast, so it's an honor to be here, really.
Good. I'm glad to have you. I go off the bio and do the bullet points of your background. But walk me through. Let's go with, how did you get into the retail business, the retail leasing business to start?
Yeah, totally. So I went to college in D.C., GW, and prior to that, I grew up on Long Island, so not too far from the city. And growing up, my father, although he was not a retail broker, he did work in the New York City real estate world prior to his subsequent career. He worked for Eddie Gordon, ESG, and a developer by the name of Arlen, which is, it's kind of like the Vornado of the 70s. They were Arthur Levine, Arthur Cohen, and my father got great experience in that world. Then his father got sick, so he left the industry, went to the family business. So he kind of always felt like it was like sort of unfinished business for him in a way.
Understood.
And growing up, coming into Manhattan my whole life, he would always point out, oh, this building, we did this deal, we built this, we did that. Literally driving around New York all the time, pointing every big building and big deal out, and would always mention like the power brokers. This broker did that broker did this. And when I went to college in D.C., I studied business there. Okay. And I didn't really realize when I went there how sort of instrumental and influential the George Washington University real estate in New York ties are. It's like crazy. It's like I had no clue.
I know.
And I wound up.
Big shout out to Brian Ray.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know him personally, but I know the name.
Okay.
I see him on the.
He's a dear friend of mine,
boards.
but he's a big GW guy.
So when I was graduating college, I freaked out. I didn't know what I wanted to do. Okay. I wanted to go into the music industry. Mm-hmm. But this was 2007. It was the time when iTunes had just really hit the scene. and all the traditional, record labels and record stores and the old way of that business was going, sideways, and no one knew how you can make a living really in that industry, especially as a kid out of college. You had to sit in the mailroom. You had to all the famous things that you hear about.
Sure.
So a friend of my family was working at the time at RKF.
Oh.
Guy's not really in the business anymore.
Who's that?
John Krieger. I don't know if you're...
I know John.
Great guy.
Sure.
He's kind of in... I don't know what he's doing. I think he's
Right.
in New Jersey now doing his own thing, and to his credit, built a nice business for himself. But I called him because I had known him through an older cousin of mine that they were friends. And I said, hey, I know you work in like retail real estate. What do you do? And after a few minutes, he said, I'm looking to hire. You should come work here.
Okay.
So I went to interview at RKF. I'll never forget it. It was like a hot summer right after I graduated Friday, and I met the CFO at the time of the company. He said, "Great, you start Monday." Like literally, and I said, "Wait, I don't have a suit. Like, what am I supposed to wear? Like,
it's funny. It's
right.
funny you say it that way because I think enough people like watch the show and appreciate that. That's what our industry is. Right. That's how it goes.
So I get the job. I start on Monday. The whole weekend I'm freaking out about like what I'm going to wear. I have no suits. I have no ties. I go to like the local store, pick up a bunch of stuff, take the Long Island Railroad in from Long Island, and I start as what they call the canvasser at the time. And I did that for 6 months or so, and I just wanted to be a broker so bad. I would knock on the CFO's door literally like once a week, like, look how many data entries or listings I got this week, and I'd show him a binder. I need to be a broker. You got to make me a broker. And finally, he agreed, and he made me a broker just in time for the global financial crisis.
Nice.
So that was great.
Nice.
Great timing on my end.
Nice.
So that comes around in 2008. Everything I'm working on totally falls apart. But I learned at that point that in some ways, just as a broker, not generally in the market, as a broker, that when these types of huge, awful events, financial events happen, sometimes it's actually not the worst thing for a broker because deals are a little bit easier to do.
And we have spoken about traditionally, within the industry, some of us that have been around for a real long time, we always talk about it, and it's hard. It's a hard pill for people to swallow, but it's at those times that you actually learn the most educationally. But you also have the opportunity to really cement relationships.
Totally, no doubt. Well said.
So, so that's how that plays.
Absolutely.
Yep. Go ahead.
So that's where I started.
Right.
The world was literally frozen. There was nothing going on. And I did what I had to do. I hustled as hard as I possibly could. On the side, I was throwing parties, like nightclub parties, just to make money because there was no salaries, there was no money coming in.
Yeah, of course.
And after about 2 years or so in that sort of environment, I was doing like really, humbly, I was doing really well for a young guy. I was like 24, 25 years old. And I was doing deals. I was doing like 15, 20 deals a year. Most of them were on my own.
Sure.
Some of the stuff was, fed through the company and I worked on in service, which was great and a great learning experience. And I worked with most of the senior brokers there. And really, I very much enjoyed the time there. It was kind of like almost like Garrick Ogg back in the day. RKF was, and Winnick and Zelnik and Co. are sort of these, institutions in the retail real estate world that you kind of have to, most people, one way or the other, started there. And I did. And make a very long story short, I wound up at Cushman & Wakefield.
Okay.
With Joanne Podell. And I was with her for quite a bit of time.
So I want to take a step back, if you mind.
Yeah, no problem.
Again, no gotchas, but like, so you transition out. Was there something just from an educational perspective to the brokerage world? What were you confronted with, if you don't mind? I don't.
Why did I leave?
Why'd you leave?
I felt as if, no knock on anyone or anything or any company or any person. I felt as if I wasn't being, my talents and the things I was good at wasn't being utilized.
Okay, that's fair.
Fair.
People find that from whether it's RKF or Newmar, wherever. I have heard often that younger brokers, as they rise, they hit a ceiling.
No doubt. That's exactly it.
Right? And we're supposed to be in a business where there is no ceiling. So I get it. That's great.
So that's what happened.
All right, beautiful. So you transitioned to Joanne.
So I got to Joanne. And Joanne, at the time, this was 2010, 2011.
Okay.
She was a very, very prominent, well-respected,
Joanne is an institution in and of herself.
But it was just about the time when I joined her where she got the mandate to do all the TD Banks.
Okay.
Like all the Nike stuff.
Sure.
It was just in the beginning of that. And I joined, and at the time, Matt Siegel, now of Lantern, was her like partner, if you recall.
Okay.
It was a while ago at this point.
I was going to say right hand, but that's partner. Okay.
And Matt left
All right.
and went to Thor to start like a retail brokerage division, if you recall. And I kind of stepped into a quasi role of what he had. Plus, I had my own relationships in business from the years I worked prior to that.
Right.
And there was a few other people on the team at the time. And we built a really strong team and did a lot of big deals.
Yes.
And it was amazing to be a part of and to witness. And, Joanne's amazing. She's an incredible broker and, did some really impressive stuff.
Right.
Her and I had somewhat of like it was amicable. We have a good relationship still, but I started my own team there at Cushman 5 or 6 years later, and did great. And I was actually very happy there. I have a lot of positive feelings and memories and things about Cushman. And after I'd say right up to the pandemic. If you recall, and just as well as I do, if not better, the retail world was evolving so rapidly, right? You had Amazon, you had Instagram, you had all these direct-to-consumer brands. You had, no one had a clue what was going to happen.
Right.
People, retail's done. It's never coming back. The streets in New York, every other store was vacant. Signs up everywhere. But I kind of just had this knack that, like, similar to today with, like, the office world, like, it's going to come back. It's just going to be different, but it'll come back. Just a matter of time. And because of my age at the time, I was in my early 30s, my network of clients and people I was representing on the tenant side were like all ex-Amazon, ex-Facebook, ex-this, all the buzzwords, and starting their own concepts.
Interesting.
And frankly, it was really just my social network. And I was just, not to... sort of play down any of my accomplishments or anything, but it was just the people I hung out with. And it was,
this is the place for more than, it doesn't have to be a humble brag. It could be a flat out brag. So you have all these great contacts that you've made, socially, business, whatever.
Correct. And we start doing deals, and I'm rolling. I'm at Cushman, and I was the number 4 global producer in the retail group at 32.
Nice.
And I was like, damn. Like, those big firms, they send the rankings out, and it's like everyone just like freaks out. Oh my God, I'm number 4, I'm number 8, I'm number this, I'm number that.
Wait, you lied. I should be number 4, right?
Wait, you got that deal. That deal didn't really book. Like, it was bullshit. Whatever. So, so I'm like, wow, I'm really like, I guess I'm onto something here. Like, I knew how much I was making money. I knew that, but like, I didn't realize how, you kind of put your head down and pop up. Like, whoa, this is like.
Exactly.
So I actually went to Cushman. And I said to them, we should effectively start a new division. We should start a whole new thing because look what I'm doing. I know it's not that much relative to a huge billion-dollar corporation, but you can tell I'm onto something here. We should focus on this and start a service line, a division, whatever you want to call it, practice group, whatever. And they actually really liked the idea. I flew around to met with this one and that one, and after 6 months of trying, they told me, we can't do this and that and this because we're public and whatever, but we'll give you a bigger expense account.
Okay.
And I was like, I'm not going to say no, but that's really not.
It doesn't move the needle.
It doesn't, not why it can't. I actually think this is a good idea.
Right.
And I went to them.
So this has got to be just from a chronology perspective. You're probably end of 19-ish.
This conversation when I got told no basically was beginning of 19. It
was beginning of 19. So
around April or May of 2019.
Okay, so you're
Yeah.
Second quarter-ish, halfway through 19, right?
And the reason I know that is pretty much to the date is because 2 or 3 weeks later, I'm preparing to go to ICSE.
Okay.
And I run into a buddy of mine and a guy who had recently gotten a very prominent job in the industry at RFR.
Okay.
A guy that I had done a lot of business with and a friend of mine that we became friends through business. And I pitched him, I said to him, look, I'm just frustrated. I have this crazy idea. I really want to do it. I kind of just got told, like, no.
Right.
And he said, well, what's the idea? And I said, look, it's not rocket science. I'm not looking to, like, invent an electric car or anything, but I am looking to sort of modernize retail brokerage.
Okay.
Interesting, he said. And he said, all right, maybe we should talk more about that. And after a few more discussions. I met with him and RFR and the whole company. And
Okay,
yeah.
so modernize retail brokerage. Can you define that?
Yeah. So at the time, social media, it was obviously prevalent in everyone's lives, but it wasn't remotely close to how it is now.
Correct.
Not even close.
Correct, because I'm in the same boat with you as far as that goes. Yes.
Right.
That was at that time.
Right.
It was really just the seed plant of social media.
Yeah, and which is interesting because it's amazing how much it's now. I mean, you can't do anything with it. Everything is on social media. I'll get home and sit on my couch. I'm going to turn on the TV.
Right.
I'm on my phone, which is sad, but it's a sort of a testament to the
Well, that's
times.
why you don't want to go to the Knick games with me anymore. You're too busy doing that.
I need the first row, not the second row.
Oh, okay. My fault. My bad. It's all good.
Just joking. No. So the social media thing, I said, why are spaces not marketed? Actually, like people put a post up with a space, but like the audience isn't really seeing this the right way on the landlord side, and on the tenant side. What else can we do to change the way the business gets done? And I said, why don't we take a piece of the commissions, or legally the value equal to a piece of the commission, and invest it in brands?
Right.
Imagine you did that with Warby Parker 15 years ago.
Yeah, sure.
Or WeWork until it went bust,
course,
right? Or the list goes on. It's not that crazy of an idea. And my thesis was, there's an upside for a broker to do it. If you could afford to take a piece of your commission and roll the dice, you might as well. And B, the founder of the company or the head of real estate of the company probably likes that because you have skin in the game.
Sure.
You're not just space chucking and throwing them in a space because you're going to make a big fee. You actually care because there's a chance, that your decision or advice that the decision they made may tank the whole company.
And I think that it's an interesting approach.
Right.
And I think that's interesting in that it's a spin-off of what I think a
Yeah.
fair amount of brokers do in the industry as it relates to property investment.
Yes, for sure.
And putting commissions towards properties.
Correct.
And things like that. So it's interesting that way.
And I said, brokers do that. Brokers invest in restaurants, whatever they invest in. But what if it was done in a more organizational way from the top, where you can make a deal with the brokers and say, hey, broker X, you just brought in a great deal with your client. We have a program. Well, if you want to take 10% of your commission, we'll match it as an investment. And who knows, we're partners on the investment. Okay. Things like that.
Understood.
And instead of phone calls and emails, or in addition to phone calls and emails, text messaging. People text. That's how you communicate with everyone.
Of course.
So why can't you communicate with your retail broker that way? Or you have a question about a space. Hey, what's the story with the corner of 51st and Madison?
Right.
Little things. And not like
and I think it's important because
Right.
it's also very generational.
Right.
It's a
True.
generational thing too.
Yes.
And it's something that we've adapted to, similar to you.
Right.
And I think that most, we could sit here and have the whole CBRE, Cushman Wakefield, JLL, and all that stuff. And yes, they're the Godzillas and the King Kongs of the industry. I get that, but I think that what we both show as boutique operators is that the landscape is huge. And there's plenty out there.
It's not a zero-sum game. Joanne always said that.
Right.
And she's right. And you're right. Yeah.
And you could do it the way you want to do it. In the same vein that I tell some of the young brokers here, in terms of style and approach, say, look, the state gives a license to anybody that can pass the test.
Well said.
Right? The business, no matter how you slice it, is still the Wild West. And there's going to be the guy that belongs in the Wolf of Wall Street, or he belongs on the street selling a car, that's going to make a lot of money in this business.
Right.
Fine. But you get to choose how you want to do it. And that's one of the benefits. People say, why do you like the business? I say it's because I get to do it the way I'd like to do it.
Right.
Do I operate and work my business in line with my clients' needs? Of course, we're service providers.
Right.
End of the day, we're service providers. But it's those type of things, and the social media became that next thing.
No doubt.
And so I really appreciate it. I'm a huge fan of yours because of that as well, because we're so aligned.
Yeah, totally.
But please, I continue on with your story.
So, and I'll say, I'll get back to the story in a second, but, I think I have a lot of respect for, and I'm not just saying this because I'm here for you and others like you that are in a different generation than I am, that have fully realized, whoa, I got to get with this because this is what it is. And I give you a lot of credit because you're doing a great job. And I'm not just saying that because I'm here.
I am a CREI influencer.
I saw that.
And
Congrats.
so, thank you.
Yeah.
And it's not the only reason I'm bringing it up is because I get to tell my 23-year-old daughter that I'm an influencer before she's an influencer. So anyway, please go. Keep going. I love it.
So the one thing that I think is the challenge with it, with the social media thing, and this is not a knock on anyone in particular,
right?
But you can make the same argument in any industry.
Sure.
There are a lot of people that use social media and are somewhat more pretenders.
Oh, sure.
And make it look like they're like the biggest broker or the biggest lawyer, the biggest whatever they are in the world, and in reality they're not. You never hear from them, and that's dangerous because I think some people get fooled, and potential clients get fooled. Oh, I saw this guy on Instagram; he's everywhere, and so it's a combination of actually being relevant in the industry, on the streets, doing deals, and adapting to this whole new world. Absolutely. And the combination is super impressive, and I think important for the future of the business.
It's great. It's great.
Anyway, so. That was my idea to modernize retail leasing and retail real estate.
So so you go to ICSC in 2019.
Yeah, and it's obviously the only thing I can think about. Now I'm a founder potentially. I'm raising money, but I'm at Cushman. I'm doing my deals. I don't know what to do. Like if it's the right thing, the wrong thing, and The gentleman I mentioned who had started working at RFR calls me, says, "Hey, we should meet." So I go sit with them, and I put a whole business plan together, and they loved it. Great. And they said, how big do you want to go? What else? A million questions. And A.B. Rosen from RFR said to me, "What do you want to call it?" He said, "Why don't we call it RFR Singer?" And I said, "A.B., I'm flattered. Like I can't even whoa, that's like, but like I don't think that's going to work."
Right.
He said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Would you hire a competitor of yours to do your leasing?" Like, no. And I said, "We need to keep it totally arm's length, totally separate. We can be partners in it. But it's an honor to represent you in the portfolio, but it's got to be its own entity, and really its own entity, not just like by name." He said, "Okay, I get it. You're right. Good. What do you want to call it?" I said, "We should call it Mona."
Right.
Mona. I said, "Mona, it's an acronym, making of a new age. And the Mona Lisa was painted in the Renaissance. Retail's going through a renaissance. Why don't we call it the Renaissance of Retail? Mona. Retail by Mona." Right. Well, I said Mona, and he said, no, you got to call it Retail by Mona.
Okay.
And I said, interesting. And I was like, I really like that. And I stopped the meeting. I went on my Instagram, and I got the Instagram right then and there.
Sure.
Before there was any deal, before there was anything. I got Retail by
Mona.
Got
to get the domain name. Got to get the domain name.
And that was it. And then... we agreed. We made it. We shook hands on terms.
Great.
This is making a very long story short.
No, that's fine.
We're negotiating the partnership and the this and the that. And March of 2020 comes around.
Yeah.
I was like a week from signing this. We were like, I was about to leave Cushman and start. Obviously, March 2020 comes around, and obviously we just decide, whoa, let's pump the brakes on this. So much like everyone else, I sat on my couch for 6 months and just watched TV every day and didn't know what was going to happen.
Right.
And we decided at that point, that summer, we might as well try because, I believe retail is going to come back. It may take time. We might as well try.
Okay.
And we launched in September 21st, 2020. I resigned from Cushman on Friday, September 18th, 2020. Which, similar to how I got that job at RKF. Right. I got the job on Friday, started Monday. I quit on Friday, started on Monday. And it's been 4.5 years or so, plus minus. And the company is 22 brokers plus support.
I think it's great. I want to dive into that a little bit too. But I just want to, I know you're young, but, maybe your memory is not as sharp. I don't know if you recall... in the summer of 2021, right, when you opened up shop, okay, how many times I walked by your storefront office, your storefront office, knocking on the window, or how many times I sent you a picture because I was going by in the morning and you guys were still dark.
Right. It was like 7:45. Like, where are you? Are you starting a company? Why don't you work yet? I'm like,
exactly.
Corey, I'm on the way.
Exactly.
Sorry.
Because
I get in trouble.
Because we're still in COVID times. and I was walking to work,
Yeah.
and I'd walk by your place,
Yeah.
and I'd see the lights on
Yeah,
or off.
I remember almost every day I get
Good.
some sort of Corey Zelnik interaction. I loved it.
Yeah, and I remember sitting with you and Michael at the time.
Yeah.
It was a lot of fun, and I'm so happy for all of your successes.
Thank you.
And so we speak. Your office is now up the block here. We see each other fairly regularly. And if I get better seats, I'll get you to a game with me. But in all seriousness, you've built a great program. And in reading your bio, it was just to know my notes, to sit down a little bit more formally. What I found interesting in the bio is how you elaborated on culture, not just, hey, we have a great culture, but the culture and how you've built it with a mix of very experienced and to a degree diversified professionals from our industry who are highly successful in all of their past iterations, and then the youth that you have. So talk about that a little bit.
So the most important thing as it relates to culture, to that point, that I wanted to really build, and I found that a lot of shops don't have this, is that I remember, and again, this is kind of just, it's not a knock on any one firm or anything, but at a lot of these bigger shops, or not even bigger, a lot of the shops, the guy who sits to your left or the girl that sits to your right, you guys are bitter, fierce enemies trying to make the same deal, trying to pitch the same business. And I just didn't understand how that could, from an organizational standpoint, how that could fly. Literally, I remember we went to a pitch and we walked in the room, and the team walking out of the room was at our company.
It's so funny you say that.
Like, what?
Because I semi-lived that conversationally, because I'm going to be 19 years old. The Zelnik Company is 19 years old this summer. And before I did that, I was talking to one of the big firms. I had left Winnick, and I was talking to one of the big firms. And part of, once you get past you get some money, and what I kept saying to the CEO was, this is my problem. I come here, and then there's this team, this team, this team. So I now just become one of 6 teams within a company.
Right.
And I heard the story of that broker A going into pitch and walking out, and broker B walking right behind them. So now on one level I say, hey, Mr. Landlord, what the F are you doing?
Right.
Why?
Right.
And then on the other hand, I find out the backstory is that Team A and Team B didn't even talk. Like, they didn't talk about comps in the market. They didn't think it would be better to go in as a team and go get so I could never get that. I could never get that at all.
And it literally happened in front of my face.
Yeah, right. You lived it. You truly lived
on
it.
here. And that and other things, people that just didn't get along, and fights and splits and this and that, which some of the stuff's inevitable in the business, unfortunately. But some of it, I figured if I was able to try to build a culture that made everybody, friends in a way, made it a really friendly environment where people actually get along. They hang out on the weekends, but also did it in a way where there was actually relevance in the industry, meaning we're actually doing deals and there's real relevant business transactions being done. It was a challenge. I didn't know and trust me, I messed up a few times with hiring the wrong people and culture fits and there were, culture problems. But to me, I see on Instagram, some of these people are at each other's, some of the people that work with me at Mona are at each other's, bridal showers and baby showers, and they're having dinner and they're hanging out, playing golf together. And I love that. I'm like, this is like, makes me feel good, really. Like, I very much think that's great. And it makes me very happy to see that.
No, that's great. And you should be proud of that.
Yeah, because it's tough. Yeah. And I think it's tough to keep that as you continue to grow. And that's something that, you want people to be happy, because this business is tough enough. To be unhappy at work, in the workplace, is just like, you don't need that.
Of course. And I think that it's an easy takeaway for you from your experience with respect to, happiness is great. People making deals always leads to more happiness, generally speaking. It's hard, hard not to. But I think that from your experience where you talked about being ceilinged, at an RKF, if you can manage that along the way, then it's as perfect as it can get in an industry that is just by its nature cutthroat.
Well said.
Right?
Yeah.
And so I think you keep doing that, you're in for wild success.
I hope so. That's the goal.
Excuse me, continued wild success. You've hit a place. You've hit a place, and that's great.
Very much appreciate it.
And so you've brought in, like we alluded to, these really seasoned veterans, okay, and you can't help but be looked at because the nature of this business has people like myself who've just been around for that much longer, just from a time in perspective, say, hey, what's this kid doing over there? What's going on?
Right.
And so I'm sure you answer the RFR question often and things like that.
Yeah.
But I think that at this point you probably just shoo it off because there's no need. You don't need to even answer it.
Yeah, look, anything you do in life, especially if you have success in it, there's always going to be haters and there's always going to be people talking down, and that's part of that's just part of life. I don't. To your point, I don't even let it.
Right.
I hear it. Trust me, and I hear.
No, that's fine.
But it's okay. It's all right.
And like you said, most of it is just jealousy and envy.
Right.
Just masked.
Yeah, I keep my head down, go to work every day.
Right.
I don't have an ego. I don't think I have an ego. I try not to. I try to stay humble, and I'm a retail broker. I'm not doing anything that's lighting the world on fire. We're leasing stores, and I'm trying to just do a good job at my clients, and that's really how I approach it every day.
That's great.
Yeah.
And how many total bodies you have? What's your team look like these days?
Including support, marketing and legal and this and that, around 30.
Nice. And how many
Brokers?
Brokers wise.
22.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
That's great. I think you got to update your website. I need some more. Need some more.
Yeah,
you got to update your website. You got to put the bodies on there,
Yes,
and you have to smile.
I have to smile.
You have to smile.
Right. It's my serious business face. My
totally.
Forget it. Yeah, my
It's all
serious.
good. It's all good.
My serious business face. Right.
So now, okay, and I love
Right.
that. I think you have a great story, and that's really why you're sitting here. We're in a world today. Tariffs. It's the word du jour.
Yeah, that's for sure. Yeah.
How are you seeing it with respect to your clients, landlord side, tenant side, both, whatever?
So I think it's a little too new to really see the real implications of it. But I can tell you that if in fact, the things that are being threatened, as severe as they are put into place, no bueno, not good for our business at all. I hope, and I'm sure it's to some degree a negotiating tactic. I hope. I think that's what it is.
I think so too.
And right now, there's a lot of things that we're progressing that are on hold. And I don't blame decision makers, especially at big global companies. How can you make a commitment to a major, store lease if the cost of your product's going to go up 50%?
Oh no,
or more.
I think
or the cost of construction to build it. Everything.
Agreed. And I think that what happens also, and you're probably seeing this, maybe not you, but some of the younger brokers at your firm, is that the mom and pops feel it real hard.
Oh, big time.
Right? Because what happens to them is they sell out what they have on the shelves. They can't reorder.
Right.
It's that re-up
Yeah.
that's going to kill them.
Kill them. And so similar to what I said earlier about when I started my career was the global financial crisis.
Right.
If you apply that mindset to now,
Sure.
and you just keep your head down and do your work as a broker, especially a young broker, don't be scared. You can make deals. People think as tough as the environment and the news and all the stuff that's going on is, as a broker, deals are always made. Even in COVID, deals are made.
Yeah, no, I agree.
So that's but tariffs, no, I don't think, hopefully it doesn't happen the way that it's being threatened, which I think it's subsided a little bit in the past couple of weeks. The rhetoric sort of calmed down.
Yeah, it's tapering,
Yeah.
but it's going to take a little bit of
No
time
doubt.
because we don't know, what the ripple effect looks like across the board with these companies, sort of behind the scenes. The companies that we're dealing with, their issue is the equipment.
Right.
We do a fair amount of work in the food service business,
Right.
and so the equipment they buy.
Yeah.
A lot of it comes from overseas, and that costs.
Right.
And they're big, and they have warehouses to warehouses equipment, but they don't have that much room.
Right.
And so that's playing a little bit of a role.
The other thing that is just sort of a byproduct of it is the lack of tourism that could potentially come here. When people, you read about all these countries downgrading the USA, on their respective countries, they're like,
The
State Department
places to go.
literally,
Yeah.
that you can. That's people don't want to come to America. They're not coming to New York, and if they're not coming to New York, we got problems.
No, I hear you. And I think
know.
there was an article the other day about Canada, like a huge fall off of Canadian tourism coming to the city.
That's a huge problem.
That's a big problem. So that's a big problem, and that's Canada because they're closest to us. But we're going to start to see it and feel it, and and it's unfortunate because we were just talking about it 6 months ago. How our tourism got back to pre-pandemic levels,
and then some,
exactly, and so that was the ripple effect for us, and rents got back up, and retail, So it's good. We're in for an interesting time.
Since the pandemic, I think you would probably agree that until this whole tariff thing, and even still to some degree, the market was rocking for years. It was stable though. The rents weren't crazy. Deals were happening, which was part of the reason deals were happening because rents weren't crazy. But you always wondered what is going to be the thing that happens that slows this down, and now you see, unfortunately, maybe this will be the thing, right?
And when you have time in the business, you have these benchmarks, right? .com bubbles, the unfortunate 9/11, the financial crisis, COVID, and what happens is that if you can keep a wide open mindset to it all, and just understand that this too shall pass.
Well said. Bingo.
Right? And so that's why I go back to what I had mentioned earlier. It's a time where deals will get done. They'll get done slower. But it's a time for you as a client service provider to just reinforce your relationships because that's value. When you're there with your client in the trenches, they'll know it when it's time to come out. And when COVID hit in March of 20, the immediate 3 to 4 months when we all could do nothing except we have clients with multiple locations, and all we can do is be on the phone with them. And what's the strategy? And are we deferring rent? Are we getting rent reductions? And how do we do that? Where we as brokers make zero. Okay, again, no one has sympathy for us and holding a tin cup for us. I get that, but they know you're there for them. And then when you come out, you have the upshot, right? Because when we go back, just staying on the COVID theme, and this, right? We're in the business. Retail was in the crapper. 19. Right. And COVID just became every retailer's convenient excuse.
Well said. In some ways, it was a good thing for the business. I mean, it was.
And then it became like a clearinghouse.
The catalyst for change.
Right, and then all of a sudden, you work your way out, and you get into, I'll call it mid 21-ish, late 21-ish, early 22. All of a sudden, there was this little retail rise.
That's right.
We started to see it. You have a lot more focus than I do on Madison Avenue. Right, when retailers, people, Madison Avenue, every single store's empty on the Gold Coast. Right. And again, a lot of people out of New York find this a hard pill to swallow. You and I get to laugh at it. But when most of the retailers saw that the rents on Madison Avenue in the Gold Coast floored at $500 a foot, right? They saw it as opportunity.
And they all pounced.
And here we are, the same street, practically every store is rented. And they're getting back to that almost $2,000 a foot range.
It's crazy.
Right? It's nuts. But it's time.
Yeah.
And it goes back, I think, to the very first thing we all learned in the business. When you took your job at RKF, someone had to say to you, this shit takes time.
Oh, yeah. Well said.
It's patience. It's understanding.
And, in today's day and age where you want to order food, you're on your phone, it's at your door in 30 minutes. You want to watch a movie, you go to your couch, boom, it's on. You want to go somewhere, call an Uber, 2 minutes, it's at your door. It's very hard to translate, especially the young professionals in today's day and age, people that I'd say are under the age of 30, and probably maybe even high, maybe 35.
Right.
Even my age, I'm 39. Even in my, it's so much in my life is so quick, and it's all I've really known. The internet, this, that, Instagram, text messaging.
Which is the exact opposite of what
the opposite. It's totally, and so all day, when you go home, that's what you do, and you go to work the next day, and the deal you've been working on for 9 months just died.
Right.
And you don't have a penny to show for it, or you got to bring it back to life, and it's been a year, and finally you got the deal done, and then the landlord's 60 days late to pay, and you're like, how is this possible in today's day and age? Which it's another question. Will that always be the case? I don't know. AI may change things a little bit.
Yeah,
I don't know. We'll see.
I think, and this is just like almost a standard conversation.
Right.
We're much more data driven.
No doubt.
We're very IA driven now.
Right.
For those of us that are grasping a hold of it, there are advantages to using it. No doubt. But I think that at the very, very core of what we do, specifically retail leasing, it's feel and touch.
Yeah, well said.
You got to get right.
No
You got to. I tell people, I still walk the streets to go look.
I see you. That's true. He does walk the streets. That's a true statement.
I may not walk
right.
in the same fashion that I tell the young broker who has to walk an entire avenue top to bottom.
Right.
But I literally just told this to someone the other day. When I get meetings, reasonably speaking, I walk to the meeting in order to walk an area that I probably hadn't seen in 6 or 9 months,
right.
because everything always changes.
Right. Yep.
And so in this business, it never goes away.
Ever.
It's the core.
Yeah, true.
And my good friend Bob Knackel always likes to say, it's blocking and tackling, blocking and tackling.
Yeah.
And it's the truth.
Right.
It's the truth.
But the other side of that coin is that, if you don't want to get tackled, don't play football. And when I mean that, it's going to be tough at times. There's going to be things that happen that are just tough to swallow. You got to just keep going.
Absolutely.
Get back up, play the next round, play the next down, and keep going.
Exactly right. So we're coming upon the annual the ICSC in Las Vegas.
Yep.
You guys gearing up? You boothing up?
No booth.
Okay.
ICSC since the pandemic, I think, has, they even changed the name. It was, they changed it with the
Recon or something.
No, it used to be, International Council of Shopping Centers.
Right.
Now it's something servicing communities. I don't know. So the whole thing changed.
Right.
The booths are, obviously the big firms have them. Mm-hmm. There is value in it. It's a good, nice place to have sort of a presence. We don't have a booth this year. We'll do a big dinner for clients.
Sure.
We'll be there taking meetings. We'll be there the whole weekend. I'm actually, sidebar, going to be on a bachelor party. 2 days before.
Really?
Yeah, so that's all. Wish
Okay.
me luck. Yeah,
Good luck.
Bring me some Gatorade or water. But
right.
it's gonna be good. I'm excited. Everyone, it seems like it's gonna be well attended. But I think the utility of the conference and sort of the reason for it and what goes on has changed quite a bit since I even started my career. It's very different how it looks now. But it's important. You got to be there.
Yeah, no, I think so. I think that presence is important.
No doubt.
I think that going back to the whole AI and data and communication is so easy.
Yeah.
You're not necessarily running to Vegas because you got to whip out your site plan and get it on a table to show somebody, because you've already done that on the computer 14 times.
You got to show your face.
Yeah.
You got to be there.
No, absolutely.
And I say to the younger brokers with me, guys, you got to be there. If you don't want to go, you don't have to go, but you should be there. You should really make your best effort to get there.
I mention it to my guys, but I will say that I put a harder lean on New York City for the younger brokers.
For sure.
Because look, in fairness, right, going to Vegas is an expensive proposition.
No doubt.
But
it's an investment.
Yeah. No, I appreciate the investment. Yeah. But to go there and just be awestruck is tough. Right. It's a tough nut, and it's a lot of money.
Yeah.
Yeah. Brandon, I got to tell you, I was excited to do this, and I appreciate the compliments you throw me, but I was really excited to do this.
Thank you.
Talk about your career, where it started, where it is today, and certainly where it's going, because I know it's going far and wide and high.
Very much appreciate that.
And I look forward to watching that, so I thank you for your time.
Thanks for having me.
At the Zelnik Exchange, and I think maybe we'll have you back around next year for your 40th birthday.
Oh, God. 8 more months.
8 more months?
December, I got time.
I'm not having you back in 8 months, but I'll have you back again, and I look forward to it greatly.
Thanks so much, Corey.
All right, Brandon.
Much appreciated.
Thanks. All right.